Okay, good evening or good morning, I guess, if you're upside down. Welcome to Phil Goes Deep. This is the long-awaited grand finale, or the not-so-grand finale of the Full Flow series. So I just need to have a quick sip of my cuppa. So it's been about 4 months, I think, since I did my last stream. And I started this series to try and evaluate and stress test Flow Designer, and since then quite a lot has happened, and some things haven't happened. So I haven't had my hair cut because the hairdressers have been locked down twice, and Quebec is now out, so I've upgraded my PDI to Quebec. I haven't done anything in the instance since upgrading, and I started to think about trying to close out this series that I started. I originally said I would try and convert the whole of GRC to Flow Designer in 24 hours, and I've done, I think, around nine episodes of this, about 1 hour 20 each. So I was heading for, maybe if this takes an hour and 20 minutes, I'll be done in 12 hours and I won't have converted the whole of GRC. So but I have learned a lot, so I want to try and share those learnings and then probably move on to do something else, because I think those findings will be useful. They'll certainly be useful to me. I'll try and wrap them up, and maybe other people will be tempted to test out Flow Designer for their own reasons. So I did put a little PowerPoint together, which is not what I normally do. Let me just switch my screens. Okay, you can tell I am a little bit behind the times on this, so let's just try. Yes, here we go. Okay, so the not so grand finale. There's a link in the description as well for the article I posted on the community to kind of get this thing started, but it really came from a conversation, probably more internally, but also I saw some stuff on the community about what we should be using Flow Designer for. And obviously, if you know that I work mostly in GRC, I figured that that was a prime candidate and would be a good opportunity to stress test Flow Designer, because if we can move the whole of GRC over, then surely this would help answer some of these questions. So how much of GRC can be converted? And should everything be built in Flow Designer? So maybe if you're building your own app, or you're looking to extend an application, or you're going to build a business rule, or whatever it may be, where does Flow Designer fit into that design decision? So then I started also with some assumptions, and I think, firstly, what I was saying to a lot of my team is that if you've got a script include, which I'll just refer to generally as an API, whether it's not an external API, but I think of it as a kind of programming interface. So when you've got a public method in one of your script includes, then that should be an action in Flow Designer. And it soon became clear that once I started trying to convert GRC into Flow Designer, that assumption probably cost me a bit of time, actually, because I just started looking at a script include, looking for the public actions, the public methods, converting them into actions, and then realized that nothing is really calling that method from outside, from a business rule, from a trigger point or an end point, I suppose. So although public methods are, you shouldn't be calling private methods, I don't think, from a flow action. The APIs within GRC, for instance, issue utils, will get called from other APIs. So those public methods don't really need to be actions at all. So like I say, I wasted a bit of time doing that. Maybe something's changed now, but before business rules cannot be converted. Although I've found a bit of a workaround for this, so maybe if you really wanted to do it, you could trigger the flow from a before business rule. Actually, you lose a bit of access to the object, and I think probably, unless something's changed in Flow Designer, maybe we'll find that out in a bit, but I don't think you should be converting before business rules. yeah, you can pass the object in, but also you don't have access to the previous as well. So that could be, even in some scenarios, even if it's an after or it's a before, you might want access to the before, the previous, and you can't seem to do that. So there's no previous and current. And then some general findings here, and something I'm guilty of myself. I don't think I read the manual much at all, but there is some great resources available. I'll share the link in the description as well for anyone that doesn't know where docs.servicenow.com is. This is talking about Paris actually, but yeah, read the manual. There are some learning paths as well, and you can get yourself a badge, you can get yourself a micro cert, you can post that on LinkedIn if you like. You will probably learn a lot, and that's probably a stronger starting point, but I like to just drill in and just see what I need to know. But I do remember getting stuck on trying to get the output of an action, and luckily James Foote was connected to the chat, and he helped me out with that. So I don't know if he was reading the manual or if he'd read the manual, or if he just figured it out. Just checking the chat, sorry, thanks Jace. I thought you were saying I was going at 2 speed or something. Yeah, maybe I was either talking too fast or the stream was screwed up. So yeah, I don't think before and delete options are available as triggers. The previous object, already talked about that. One thing I found in, it's different if you're building your own application. Of course, you can design it from the baseline of, I'm going to use Flow Designer, and you don't need to kind of be pained with some of the things I've been going through, but certainly some of the APIs and some of the methods don't have return values in there, and I think that's a pretty poor approach to functional programming. So then when you convert the action, convert the method into an action, you can't then access the results of it. So from a debugging perspective, it doesn't give you all the things you need. So I think that's a general premise. Even if you don't think you'll need the value, I don't think there's ever any harm in returning a value in a function. I didn't find a way to unpublish an action, so once I kind of built it, I can't consume it till it's published. I've published it and then it's left there. Maybe that's to protect it from some of the dependencies if you've built a flow or a subflow that's calling the action, but maybe I'm missing something. The arrays and objects getting handled, again, I haven't read the manual, so it could well be my problem, but I like to use objects a lot to be a bit more dynamic. It's not, I found something, I think it's called JSON schema. I don't want to share the link, so I'll probably get it wrong, but yeah, the JSON schema, I think if you're following that, then it fits perfectly and slots in very nicely. But if you're trying to just pass an object and then digest it in a script or within an action, I was a little bit out of my depth trying to do that in Flow Designer, especially live. So yeah, sometimes if you've got a before business rule, it's calling a script include, and that script include knows it's going to get called from a before business rule, so it won't have the update in there, and that creates a problem for converting. And yeah, this is a really positive thing actually, and the reason I really like Flow Designer is that you can just go in and debug the execution. Although I don't know if I wrote it down here about the logs. What I figured out, and I don't know exactly how this works, but it's kind of my interpretation of it. If I call an action directly, for instance from a UI action, maybe I just call that action, I can go and look at that action and see the executions. But if that action gets called by a subflow or a flow, I can't see the execution of that action. I only see the execution or the results of that action from the flow or the subflow that actually executed. So it's almost like the whole object, including the flow, the subflows, all of those components get compiled, and sometimes you do lose a bit of visibility there. Return values can be evaluated in the execution. Yeah, so this is a key point I think to the bit about returning values. But I've certainly seen some stuff I've done for customers where we've put some fairly simple flows in place using Flow Designer, and they actually had access to the Flow Designer in their production environment. They weren't able to make changes, but they could see the execution. So it was able to support them in their kind of what's happened here question. So next steps, yeah, I've got an update set that I've been using for the full flow. I think I'll stick that on share. I don't know if it's going to be of any use to anyone, but it might be interesting. Any feedback, and then I'm just going to dig in a little bit to Quebec. But if I also take a view on my Draw.io file, I'll just check in that OBS is up and running. Upside down Andrew, yes, async makes all that hard. So when you're dealing with async, obviously you don't have access to the previous object, but there's a lot of asynchronous processes, business rules from GRC. There's a lot of processing that takes place that you wouldn't want to wait for the system to respond and be hanging around. For instance, if you're mapping, there's a lot of M2M relationships, and those M2M relationships trigger other processes, and you can get into a whole world of pain if you're not careful. Those asynchronous jobs I thought were actually prime candidates for Flow Designer. I don't think I ever got to it, so if I'm just looking here what I went through, I tried to document as I went along. This was my approach to convert. So looking for those API calls, as I say, initially I just identified the public methods and created action. So I was over here and then found out they were never really getting called. They were getting called in kind of internally within another method. So yeah, identify them and review them, and then the public methods, turn them into actions, create flows. I think it's kind of de facto standard that anytime you're creating an action, you should create a subflow for consuming that action, which can then be consumed by a flow. The flow contains the trigger and can even be used. It says you're getting some buffering. I don't know if I've got network issues, but yeah, the subflow can be consumed from a flow. The flow can be triggered from, like your typical triggers of updated records based on conditions, but you can also set up scheduled jobs or replace scheduled jobs. One of the things I've found and been using a little bit is to convert the action or create an action and call that from a UI action, and you can call the action or the subflow asynchronously, which allows your UI action to kind of trigger it, and rather than throwing an event and using a script action, you can actually process that in Flow Designer as well. But yeah, the subflow can be called without having to define a trigger. I think sometimes if you just create the flow, you end up defining a trigger that you try and condition out and never gets called. So that's completely unnecessary. So create the action, create the subflow, and then if you need to, create the flow as well. And then go back and obviously replace those calls or deactivate the business rule, make sure it's working. There might be some embedded code. So sometimes, not everything's in a public method or in a script include. So you can take that code and turn that into an action and then call the action accordingly. So some stuff's buried in or embedded within a business rule, for example. I didn't mention anything on the kind of learnings that I've got here, but I haven't seen anything that suggests Flow Designer should be used for any client-side logic. Obviously, yeah, Ajax could potentially make a call to Flow Designer. I haven't really thought about whether that's a valid use case. But yeah, if you've got a flow, your business rule would be replaced with a flow and called a subflow. Your UI action can call the subflow, and these call the actions, but you can call the action directly as well. I think it depends on the complexity, and start mapping out your flows to begin with, and talk about how you might create kind of modular components. So I started off looking at the different scopes that I was going to work in. If anyone's looked at GRC, you'll know that there's a lot of scopes there. GRC profiles is central to most of it. You don't really, apart from VRM, there's no GRC application you can have without having profiles, and that's where a lot of the kind of integral components get processed. So things like entities, indicators, issues, all of those sit central and are used across compliance, used across risk, and then we start getting into advanced risk, audit, etc. So I started with profiles. I did some stuff with indicators, and yeah, this is where I had a script action that was previously getting triggered. So the execute UI action on an indicator will throw an event and get triggered by a script action. So I replaced that with a UI action. There's a scheduled job that runs for indicators. The generation of indicators for templates. I think I used the color. You can tell it's 4 months ago, but I used the color coding to say that blue was kind of in development, in progress, and the green was stuff I'd actually done. I think the orange stuff was kind of done but not tested, and then the reds is where I found some problems along the way. So yeah, there's some business rules here that are before, and it can't handle the before execution, can't handle the delete, create indicator when associated to script action. Again, it's all about the previous object basically. That started coming out in the first episode or two. Dealing with issues, there's some Ajax stuff which I didn't touch. Yeah, update or create issues. Create issue when result fails. Not sure why that was red. And then this was failing. Close or update when result passed. I'm just trying to get myself back up to speed here a little bit as well. So at the time I was doing 1 or 2 of these a week, and then other things happened. So issue grouping, yeah, see, not public. This is where I started assessing things first, mapping out what's in there and saying, do I really want to try and convert this? So I think the red in this occasion was like, don't bother. This script action I think was converted, but the UI action is what calls it. So you can do a client side group issues using your tick box on the list action, and that pops up and then that throws an event. So I think I converted that, but I don't know if I've consumed it from the Ajax. Assessment utils I've done nothing with. GRC utils I thought was going to be the main process. So there's a UI action that calls a script action to generate profiles. Script actions can be replaced and the subflow called directly from a UI action. Yeah, so I think I learned that afterwards. So I did the conversion and I got my action to I used the script action to call the flow, and I didn't need to do that. I could have just called it from the UI action. And I'm doing that on, what have I done that on just recently? Oh yeah, an import process that I'm working on. So I actually import in Excel from an attachment. So I built the transform maps and all the scripts, but I trigger it from the record, and rather than sitting there waiting for it to load, I throw the asynchronous call to the action. Yeah, lots of things going on the business rules. This is about profile types, relating profile types, relating profiles, generating profiles, but this is not dealing with the mapping, okay, and generate links. So this is where I got stuck into last time. What's going on in the chat? So yeah, shout out to Jace and Andrew, upside down Andrew. Flows are different. It's like they want to be business rules or workflow, but still different. Yeah, I mean, obviously workflow, we know it. We know how it works. We trust it. And up until Quebec, I think, there was no kind of scratch pad. So from one action to another, you had no scope, really. It was kind of executing actions, and only you had scope, but only on the records that are getting passed in. There was no way to create some kind of objects to handle through the flow. And I think I saw Andrew post about this on LinkedIn, that there is one of those now. So like I say, I've logged into my Quebec instance. I upgraded it as soon as it was announced, and then I've had a busy weekend doing something completely different, which was refreshing, but I'm very happy to get back into some ServiceNow stuff and try and finish off this full flow series. So I've got my update set here. Like I say, I'll publish that and stick it on share. I've got Flow Designer. I also use categories. I think categories are great. When you start to see in Flow Designer the flows, actions, subflows organized by scope and by when you're in a, this is new, connections, I'm not seeing that, it looks nice, you can see a bit of a UI change. So if you're in a flow, let's just filter here on GRC, relate entity types, yeah, this is me, find existing open issue, indicators was run all indicators. Okay. Oh, I've got to say the UI is looking nice. What's happened? What have they done with it? Just feels fresh right now. I haven't looked at Quebec at all, so I really don't know what this is going to be like. I've looked at the release notes, but this says it's inactive. I wonder why that is. Did I not activate it? Let me check if my scheduled job is deactivated. If I was to add an action in here, and if I picked on GRC profiles, yeah, these are the categories here. So I've kind of organized copy response. I don't remember setting these up. Post message. These look new. I wonder if they're out of the box. Yeah, this reskin. I mean, is it built? Is it using the UI experience? Definitely feels modern. Can't wait to see how it reacts. Yeah, so these are categories. That was my point. I'm also curious why I've got an inactive scheduled job. So if I just go into scheduled jobs and go GRC, I mean, look at all of those. Some of these are data collections. Okay, let's filter those out. Look at all those GRC related scheduled jobs. This is prime stuff for pushing into Flow Designer. If you think of Flow Designer as being, you know, very at home with Asynchronous. Oh, James is here. Hey James, how you doing? Sorry for lurking on your flow on your stream the other day, and it was in incognito. So my indicator nightly run. Yeah, so I've deactivated it. So I've deactivated that, but I haven't activated this. I doubt I've got any indicators to run, but let's just check if it runs, to be honest. If I just say test and run it, it's all part of the upgrade. Right, completed, and I've got green signs there, but does it tell me? Doesn't tell me anything, so I haven't got any real return values in there. Cheers, Andrew. Take care, mate. Okay, so what was I going to do next? I think what I'll do is just try and convert some of the remaining bits that I've done, and whatever I've done tonight, I hope that the learnings that I've shared at the beginning of this will be useful. Maybe I can go back and update some of them if anything else comes out, but really I just want to put this kind of idea to bed. So if I go to, let's think about it, a control objective. What's this? I've seen this a couple of times. Natural language filter. Okay, some neat stuff popping up. So we check if Explore works. So we see if Explore's working in Quebec. I'm on 4.7. I probably need to upgrade it. Has it been tested? Let's just do it for Some gigs. Look at that, it's beautiful. Explore 4.8 is now available. I haven't checked the release notes of that, so looking forward to getting this on here as well. So in a control objective, basically these controls can get generated in two ways. I can go in here and add an entity. I can say this actually belongs to something, Acme or whatever my entity is, and when I click add relationship, that triggers a flow through Ajax. Okay, and you can see I've got two additional entities. I've got a control down here. So this isn't something that's I'm looking to really convert, because that's coming from the client side. I've really not explored that stuff with Flow Designer. Maybe you could get the action in there. I think what I found was, in my kind of opening question of can I convert, or how much a GRC can be converted to Flow Designer, I did feel that it got a little bit monotonous, and although I can be stubborn and just think keep going, there was kind of diminishing returns on that investment, so I kind of stopped. But I just want to wrap it up now. When I click edit here, if I'm mapping an entity type, which one? Business services, probably got loads in there. Let's just check. Yeah, you can see up here controls are being generated for this control objective. Click here to see progress. Let's just take a look how many entities we're talking about. Okay, only 44. So if I did convert this controls are being generated for this control objective, and this message up here that's stopping me now from processing this because all that stuff's happening in the background. I click here to see progress. All of this item generation progress is handled through the item generation table. If you ever get stuck in GRC and you think what's going on, why does this message not go away, there's a little table, I'll call it a little table, item generation, I think that's it. Yeah, go and check this table out. Okay, this is what's stopping things, kind of handling the locking. If something's got stuck, you'll see it on here, and maybe you'll see a record with like track. If you see the track retiring or track running, but it doesn't have the actual running or the retiring elements, it's got a little bit caught up in itself. So it was kind of, that was the reason that I wanted to start looking at Flow Designer for GRC, because that would maybe give us a bit better visibility of what's really happening there, and if things get stuck. Let me just refresh this list. Yeah, 46 is what we expect. So how did that happen? There's a business rule on this M2M table, and from a design perspective, if you look at what GRC's done, they've got M2M tables, but they're not really M2M tables as in sys M2M tables. They are just an M2M table, right? And if you know much about database modeling, any table that's got a many-to-many relationship is an M2M table. It doesn't have to be a sys M2M. So if you can create a table that has a relationship to, you know, just basically holds the relationship, by not using sys M2M, what we've actually got here is an extended functionality. So if I just go to list on this table, when I go to .config, I can't get to the table very easily, so I have to go to the list, right click, and then configure table to get to this view. I don't know if there's a quicker way to just get to the table. I just want to get to this bit. So look at this table, and by the way, this is in GRC scope, and it's talking very generically about content. Profile got renamed to entity, so if you see me talking about entity type and looking at profile type, that's just because the name got changed. Content is completely agnostic. Control objective extends content. Risk statement extends content. So what we've got is an extension model in here which allows GRC to leverage common functionality through the table structure. Is that a new link? No, added by SN Utils. This is not a UI action. Okay, never noticed that before, but thanks Arnold. Okay, so show schema map. Yeah, what you've got is this content to entity type. That's a relationship, so don't show the reference tables. Yeah. Content to entity type is extended to compliance for control objective to entity type, and extended to risk for the risk statement to entity type. You've got to love the naming convention as well, just switching it up. So that means you can apply some logic here and get the same logic in both of these and then execute it based on the class. It's really nice. Definitely increases kind of reusability, and I really like the kind of architecture side of GRC. So what happens if we this is the one, generate links. What happens when we click edit? When we're in that control objective, I'm just going to close some of this down. When we're in the control objective, we click edit. That edit button is going to either insert or delete. Okay, so they're the two operations that are actually happening on the M2M table. But because this is not a sys M2M record, a true sys M2M record, there's another table that hides in the background called sys collection. So if you've got a table that is acting as an M2M table and you want it to act as an M2M table by taking advantage of things like edit buttons, and when you click edit, where does it go afterwards, and all of those kind of journeys through, and you want that slush bucket, sys collection, if I just go in here SNGRC M2M, you can see okay, I think I'm back. So I've just can't find a cable. My mic power is cut. So if you just let me know that the audio is okay, I'll try and remember where I was. Just chatting one off then. Yeah, sweet. Thanks, James. Yeah, so that table that I was looking at was going off into. I've gone well down a rabbit hole here, but loud and clear, sweet. Hopefully, you tell me that my audio now is not as good as it was. Otherwise, that mic was not a great investment. that table here, configure this table, M2M statement to profile type. Yeah, so that's in compliance actually. So if we find that table here, you can see that this is how it knows. So when you do sys M2M, it's kind of baked in, but because this M2M is not a proper M2M, you're actually kind of free from all of the restrictions of an M2M table. You can extend it, but you can still get all of the M2M behavior by mapping out the relevant fields and the tables and telling it, you know. So when you look at the edit button itself, let's do it on here. Too many tabs open. Yeah, if you look at that edit button, configure UI actions. So it's a custom edit button. In fact, it's not the global one, but it's using the sys verb, okay, and it's got like pretty standard stuff on here. Sys M2M ref, sys palm stack, and if you ever created a custom edit button, you'll see sys palm collection and all of that stuff. So that's kind of where it comes from. I don't know a huge amount about it, but I've built some custom M2Ms in the past and then had to build custom edit buttons. But a lot of that is kind of can be made easier. So that business rule, right? When we use the edit button, it creates an insert or delete on the M2M table. Generate link sits at the central, it's on the GRC M2M, but it just receives the class. It says, oh, your compliance processed this way, your risk processed that way. But we've got two M2M tables, both using the same central logic. That's async. Look, it only triggers on insert and update because that's coming from edit. So GRC item generator engine. Did I not item generator engine? Yes. So this is where I left off in, when was it? October. I'm going to convert that generate links method to a flow designer action. That is where we're going. So I started this on Orlando, then I upgraded to Paris, maybe did a couple of bits on there, and like I say, I can make it all the excuses in the world, but everyone's busy. I just haven't done anything since. So all we need to do really for this to work is pass in a glide record to generate links. I haven't done this for a while, so let's see. How easy is it? So I'll go in here, new action, and I'm going to call this generate links application, of course, category. Oh, I did do the assessment utils. I got excited that more had come out straight from Quebec. So I just want to, if I can, just want to grab that. This whole form is like the behavior is the same, exactly like we expect it, but it just feels different. So I'm going to use that naming convention, but I'm going to create my own action category. Item generator engine. Category there. So flow designer, I've got a category. Generate items. Item is a kind of bit of terminology within GRC, which comes from that extension model. So an SNGRC item table is extended into the control and the risk table. So when you see item, it means it's a control or a risk, but I don't really care which one of those it is. You get specific stuff within compliance. So this is generate links. My input is going to be a glide record. So it's actually an M2M, isn't it, that's coming in? The record is the M2M record. So GIM2M. And this is the, maybe I should put this in the learnings, but when you're building the action, because you specify it's a reference and you say what it's a reference to, it's going to be SNGRC M2M content profile type. Yes, content entity type. So actually the other logic about additional entities, I think, triggers generate links but is processed through the client Ajax. By me specifying that reference and what table it is, if I want to consume this action, I can only pass in a record of that class. Okay, so it stops me just throwing anything at it. That's my input. So what would be my output? I don't think there's a return in here. Oh, it does return. It returns this.get method, and this.get method is what handles it. So I'm going to worry about the output in a bit. I want to create a script action. I've lost a bit of real estate here, so the UI is beautiful, but now I've got to scroll down a little bit more. It used to be just there. This is going to be, oops, generate links. My variable can create a little bit of duplication because I've already done this, okay? But your inputs here are what's coming into the action. There's nothing to say that all of those inputs are going to go straight into the generate links. Okay, but the naming process and stuff like that feels like it's a little bit of duplication. But I could easily have another script sitting right next to that that is going to take one of the variables, one of the inputs, sorry, and process it, and the next script is going to take the others. Okay, and then I can process both of those scripts separately. So sometimes with anything, when you've got additional flexibility, it does create additional complexity. But I'm just going to grab that GR record. Okay, it looks like it's not forcing before. It used to force, I forget the name of the case where you've got underscores. I think that happens here. Maybe if you've got a space. Yeah, it puts it there, which obviously makes sense. But yeah, this one doesn't allow you to have uppercase. Not sure why that is. So because I'm in SNGRC scope right now, all I need to do is put, if I just put outputs, type outputs dot, I don't know what's coming back, so let me just do this, equals new SNGRC item dot generate links inputs.grm2m and create a variable. I feel like values a little bit. Let's go and find out what it is. This is where you can really get lost in the detail. Generate links. In fact, can I open this? Another tip, James, I don't know if you're still watching, but I know we were talking about streaming and stuff. So what I have done is made sure that I log into my machine on a different account. So I don't think it likes me. Yeah, because the last thing you want to see is anything you shouldn't be seeing because you're logged into the wrong machine. So I've got my own account here, local account. That says it's running. Let's just see. Open. It says it's connected. I just basically don't want to click around in that. Just pull down here. Got it. Item. Oh, it's there. Item generator engine. Okay. So here, get method. Go to definition. So the record comes in, and it knows at this point generate links is passing in its hard-coded generate. So the table name gets me the class name. It knows it's extended. Okay, so obviously you can't call get record class name if it's not an extended table. Does a try catch? I probably don't do enough of them. I'll try and be probably more defensive in my functions. I'm not sure which is better, to be honest.
So set strategy is where it really gets. So look at what our table is. It's SN GRC M2M content. In fact, it's not, because we're coming from now. We were in control objective. So the control objective table is just open that. So this is how it knows. So it's coming through. The logic is triggered kind of centrally on the base table. Where are you? No results. Maybe it starts with like instance of. Okay, SNGRC content, no. Instance of. So it doesn't need the full name. Oh, but it's an instance of content profile type. Okay, so it's dealing with the base one here. Set strategy again. Let's go and look at that. So we're on line 68. Set strategy. So it just doesn't match. It doesn't care about the thing. So it's going to call compliance generator strategy. Okay, I do love this kind of strategy pattern in indicators as well. And when you've got that kind of central functionality, and then very much, I think they called it in the design principles something like Scion applications. The strategy patterns work very well actually, and indicators use it based on the type of indicator you're executing. So you've got a lot of core functionality in the kind of base APIs, and then you've got the specifics out in the relevant strategy classes. Obviously, from this perspective, it's classifying it based on the application. So this just gets the strategy, which means that we can call probably a run or execute file. But line 68 is where we were. Set strategy, operation is generate. So let's go and look at this. But notice now, still not returning anything. So although we do return in that first instance, generate items to content type, there's nothing getting returned. So my action can never really pass anything back. Yeah, it doesn't return anything. Okay. So I won't bother with my output. In my flow designer, I'm just going to say here, new. And what that means is I just lack a bit of visibility when it comes to debugging it. Okay, so if I want to know what's happened with it, it's great. I can see it's called it, but I can't see, how many, or what did it actually do at each stage. So generate links, and literally it's that simple. If I save this, so one of my findings before Quebec was no option to unpublish an action once published. So if you get a record in Explore, you can run it and see the output exactly. Okay. We start going down the road that I was talking to you about of when I start clicking into the object, I've already generated the links, and I could have generated thousands of links, right? I could have, depending how many entities are in my entity type and how many content and control objectives I've linked it to, there's a whole heap of processing going on there. And yeah, once it's run, it shouldn't run again. Basically, it should have already checked itself. I'm going to come back to that point though, James, and see. So if I click publish, so I publish my action, that means I can then consume it. And I can also get my code snippet now. I couldn't get my code snippet before. I can't unpublish it. I haven't called it from anywhere. Can't make it inactive. Action preferences. Is that new? Toggle. Show inline script toggle. Don't know what that means. I can't unpublish. So that's for me a little bit of, what if I made this by mistake and say I don't need that, which I did do a lot of. Data pill picker for value, just meaning the run. Yeah, do you know what actually? I do that a hell of a lot, right? So, and if anyone's watching this and we've ever been in a technical interview or anything, this might be a little cheat. I'll know for sure. So let's say I ask you, how do you debug an asynchronous business rule? That's a beautiful question, because there's no really right or wrong answer. And some people go down a road of, oh, I'll put loads of logs in. I don't need to do that, right? I'll just look at, and it might not be an asynchronous business rule. It might be, I'll ask the same question and say, what about a scheduled job? It doesn't matter, right, what that is. I can, and this is not the best scenario, because once the record's inserted, the process is run, unless I go and false and insert the record onto the M2M table, I need that current. But this is why I love Explore for this exact purpose. If I go and look at my M2M record here and go open and explore, I was just showing this to someone earlier actually. I'll just change GR there, right? I'm not going to get into the conversation about using GR. I know that's a sensitive subject. So the other thing I do is, I've got a stopper on it already. I'll then fire up, too many windows open as usual. I'll fire up script debugger. I wonder how this looks in Quebec. I indicated GRC, right. Script tracer, I've not looked at that yet. I've not even read the notes properly on it. So yeah, if I run this, and this is another reason why I love Explore, because some APIs are locked down. I'd love to know, Jace, actually. I know GR's fine, and I'm stubborn, right? So I say, if I write a function called do something, pass in a value, to be anal, right? Var gr now equals, so that is my new glide record right, and this will be my, let's call this table name. So if this is, okay, let's take an exact example, because otherwise I'm trying to be too abstract. So this is the control table, for example, and I'll call this activate control, something like that. And this will be ID. And then gr.set value active true. So I'll tell you what I love to do. I know you should use brackets. I'll just put a one-liner in here and return false. Right, so then I've failed, but otherwise I don't need to worry about trying to keep inside curly braces and messing up all my indents. Gr set value and then gr.update. For me, gr now belongs to the scope of this function, and I don't need to name it control, okay, because like I've named my function nicely as well. So I spent a bit of time arguing the case on this, but ultimately, yes, GR's protected, exactly. You could, but it's going to fail in a code scan. It's going to fail in a code scan, and I'm going to get black mark against my name and have to rework it. So I think there's still a scenario, and I was talking to some of the old guard, maybe people who've been around. Active, true. You can see them. You can see them a mile off. If you think if you call something that rewrites GL like a business rule, yeah, there's something where it doesn't matter how kind of encapsulated it is, it could break. It's a very rare scenario, but it could happen. And for that reason, and for the reason of not wanting to show up in any, especially, actually I've got to look at instance scans as well. I'll just call it that, right? And I've given up the argument, and I'll take it. If someone gives me a convention, I can follow it. And depending what happens, you know, maybe it's even more readable. It takes me a few moments longer. It's not a problem. Anyway, we got distracted. So I'm going to call this API method, and I've got script debugger fired up. Nothing should happen because the M2M already exists, but I can catch that. So how do you debug an asynchronous business rule? Take the asynchronous piece out of it. The fact that it was triggered asynchronously, if I want to know what it's doing or why it's not working or what it should be doing, sometimes debugging isn't about fixing something that's broken. It's just about checking your code works and does what's expected. So I'll just fire it in here. Say, right, okay. Yeah, some ServiceNow stuff that runs inside your session can still break. So somebody who I work with showed me that, and we recreated it, and it was that at that moment that I gave up arguing. I thought, what's okay? So it shows up in code scans. That's enough, really. But the fact that it could break on this one scenario, but I couldn't remember what it was, and he can't remember, and it's broken. Anyway, I am going through a function which I didn't mean to click into. Don't really want to go through AUtils. Yeah, so is instance of. It's a nice feature that checks the glide table hierarchy. Okay, because we use a lot of extensions in GRC, is instance of just takes the base table name and the current table name, and good to go. But you can step over these functions. The problem is if you step over too much, you do miss out. But it should go down to not this one. I think it's this one. So it should go into here. Ah, did it wrong. Let's avoid the glow. Yep. Just get away from it. I want to go into set strategy. And I don't want to go into the control generator strategy. So this doesn't work. Anyone know how to do this on a Mac? Option F9. Is this going to work now? I'll tell you. Let's go. What's the other one? Option F10. Doesn't work. It wants to turn my sound up. I'd love that if there was a keyboard shortcut. If I've got to do function, option F9. Oh, beautiful. It does rely on two hands. Mouse is almost quicker. I am not getting into that conversation, James. Yeah, I just avoid it. Don't do GR. Save yourself some hassle. And no further comments. Auto business rule for assessment. So there's loads of them in GRC, and they hardcode sysids in there. But same with state flows, actually. Anyone got an opinion on state flows? Good or bad? Are they? I don't see much talk about them, but you know what? All I was trying to show here, I'm going through real detail that I don't need to go through. I just wanted to show how I would use Explore to be able to access an API that might be locked down. I can change my scope, and then I can catch it in Script Debugger, and then I don't need to worry about the fact that this is asynchronous. Okay, but what I'm going to do, I'm going to deactivate that business rule. I've done it too early actually, so luckily no one's on my instance. I've got the action set up. I now need to create a subflow. Generate links, and hopefully my category is there now. Yes, we can reuse. Generate links. Okay, so again, it feels a little bit like duplication at times, and actually accessing, there's no output coming from my action anyway, so let's create an input. This is going to be my GRM to M, and it's going to be a reference. It's going to be, oops, the wrong shortcut, reference to SNGRC content, M2M content. Content to entity type, that is mandatory, can't do anything without it. That's my input defined. My action is my action, which I've published, and it's under item generator. Generate links. Pass in my input here. That's done. Publish. I've got generate links on there. The generate links, just thinking, if I removed it, get method, generate links. My business rule is getting called when insert update. I missed this earlier. I was talking about the edit button to actively. A bit too excited. So insert and update but not delete. So there's another one called delete links. Delete links. It's basically going to be the same thing, but that runs on delete. This throws an event queue. Okay, it's going to get a bit more complicated. Let's stick to this. Generate links. Now I need a flow because I am replacing a business rule. So what's it called? Generate links. A category on this. Run as the user who initiates the session. You don't get that option in the business rule. It's the first time I'm opening a new flow, create a flow. Welcome to, let's take a tour. Is this the new tour designer? The guided tour? Or is this only in Flow Designer? What's the purpose of the subflow? I think it, yeah, and when you're doing a one-to-one kind of action to subflow, I don't feel like it's necessary. But let's say that I did want to start building it out later. I know for this case it is a little bit trivial. I don't really need the subflow here. If I want to call, what's the difference between calling an action and calling a subflow? I guess a subflow can do a bit more with it. So maybe what I would do is, like the scenario I just showed you in this case, we've got a business rule that does delete links and a business rule that does generate links. I guess this is behaving slightly differently. We can probably, if I planned any of this stuff and actually thought about it, we could probably call the subflow something like manage links or handle links or something like that, and the subflow could then make the decision on the operation or take a condition in here, right? So you input could be operation and the flow can handle pass the operation in. But then again, you could do that in the action. You could take it in here and take your inputs in there. So I don't know. I know we had a chat on the live coding session recently and wrapping things in subflows. I think the main point is you don't need to have a flow. You can call a subflow by copying the code snippet. But then you can call the action by copying the code snippet. Create code snippet. Oh, my action's not. I changed it. You can't unpublish an action. Did I mention that? Now I can create a code snippet, even though I could call it. So in the flow, add a trigger. It's going to be created or updated, and my table is going to be SNGRC content. No, SNGRC M2M content. Profile type, entity type, and the filter. No, don't need a filter. There's no condition on there. And to run just after asynchronously. So I want to make sure. This bit always gets me. You don't have this option in the business rule. Your run trigger once is for that record, but then it wouldn't be created or updated. I guess you could say, yeah, created or updated. I only care about running this the only time. But it's got to get created somehow for each unique change. I just go for every update because I'm not sure. I guess there's a performance benefit. Yeah, so definitely 2 actions. That would be cleaner, but maybe the subflow. Maybe we can consolidate with the subflow. The one thing I did start when I did this was to try and do a like for like. Okay, so because I was looking along the way going, oh, that could be better, that could be better. And then I'll be refactoring, and really what I was trying to do is just test out Flow Designer and see about where it fits in. Run for both interactive and non-interactive sessions. I can't think where you would have a non-interactive session because it's the user that's doing the mapping. Run for any user. Yeah, and run only on. Yeah, we want to make, this is important, okay, so we want to run this on extended tables, okay, so that wasn't an option that I remember before, but looking at GRC extension, that's very important here. Not all things should be run again. Yeah, I'm just struggling to think of a scenario where that would apply right now. So if I talk about a like for like, then the business rule's not going to have that consideration. But I like the fact that this exists. And run the flow in the background. Okay, so this is our asynchronous. Then we're going to call our subflow. And it's under profiles, it's undo. Oh, now we've gone capitals. Generate links. And we pass in our record, which is our guide record of the M2M. Wait for completion. What does that mean? Is that new? Oh, I guess, no, it's not. I don't know if that was there before, but I guess if you won't be able to access the output, I don't have any output, so I don't really need to wait for completion. Might not for your things. In general, it's an option I use frequently, especially dealing with integrations. Yeah, I think I can think of some scenarios where it would be beneficial to make that decision, and certainly the fact that it's considering it, but probably in this current scenario, I can't think of anything that would apply to. So I'm going to save this, I'm going to activate it, I'm going to map an entity type. So let's go and see what happens. Let's go and just check our entity types. I did business services before. Has business applications got anything? Yeah, I've got 86 in there, lovely. I should be testing the performance out. So that's in here. I can do it the other way around. I can attach a control objective. I just need to make sure active is true and create controls automatically is true. Run that filter. Let's throw a load at it. Now I've got the messages. That's good. So I've got 86 times 4. What's that? 160, 320, 344 controls we should get. So all of this is handled by the API itself by writing to the item generation table, and you can see it happens sometimes when you install an application. It tells you it's 100% and then it drops back. This is not a huge volume for GRC, but the benefit I'm hoping for here is when I look at the executions, you can see generated links, how long it took, and this is for each record, so there's 4 of them. I wonder if that wait for completion, it won't queue things up, I don't think. They'll all be running asynchronous and they queue up on the kind of on the workers. It's been triggered 4 times, and it certainly looks like it's generated some stuff. Now it's dropped right back down again. Just going to dismiss that. Let's just go and look. See what's going on. Should have 86 controls on there. So you can see that entity type is visible from here. A little bit of a performance issue, but I think it's local because at the same time I've got a YouTube error. I've got 86 controls. Okay, so what's different about, I'll count it as a success. What I do before is generate links. Okay, that's done. But generate links is actually triggered from multiple places. So if we look at it, maybe which one to use for tables, but this is SNGRC M2M content to profile type. There's other places it's linked, right? You've got, you know, what if a new entity arrives, okay, that meets the condition of the entity type filter. So the trigger point there would be, well, I've got a new business application. It would map the entity, the profile, to the profile type table. And because that profile type is already mapped to 4 control objectives, it's then got to go and create 4 more controls for each of those control objectives. Okay, so there's various trigger points for generate links, and this is the one that I've done. There'll be another one for something like, I don't know if it's profile to profile type or profile type to profile. And as I say, that's been renamed, so in the application it's called entity type, which certainly lands a lot nicer. Let's just see if that's completed. Yeah, that's all done. And then the messages go away. And now I can actually work with this record now. So a little bit slower than we'd like, but I don't think that's anyone's fault. I think that's just my network. Well, if it's anyone's fault, my ISP. Control objectives. Where were we on the business rule? I want the delete links. This looks a bit more interesting. How long have we been going for? We've actually been live for 1 hour and 15. I try and keep these to 1 hour and 20 because I've divided 24 hours by that amount, and it meant that I was going to be doing around, I don't know, 18 shows. But then I haven't done one for 4 months and figured I really want to wrap this stuff up. So I did the learnings at the front. I don't think so far I haven't learned anything additional. This is actually putting the item processing into the business rule itself. Add processing content. Why is that? Okay, so that puts the record into the item processing. This is asynchronous. Ah, this is after. Oh, of course it's a delete. So maybe that's why they've broken the business rule out. Because you definitely want the delete to have occurred before you start triggering all this logic. If you did it as asynchronous, that cascading effect could be problematic. And it is problematic at times, depending on your volumes. So I wonder if that becomes an action, event queue is not necessary, because you can, okay, I'm just trying to think why this is handled differently. So we definitely want to make sure that that happens before that gets triggered. Is there a way? I created an action before in Flow Designer to call an action, because that doesn't exist out of the box from what I've seen. So I kind of had a recursive Flow Designer thing going on that was saying, well, I need to call myself. I can't remember the exact use case. There was no action for that. I couldn't say call a flow. Yeah, I got the flow to call another flow. It sounds like trouble, but I'm wondering if you could have an action. So although the flow might be triggered synchronously, it would call an action that, so this bit would happen synchronously, but then this bit could be handled as call an action asynchronously, because that's effectively what's happening in the event queue. And therefore you're not going to be stuck with performance. But then within the existing API for generate links, where are you? Right at the top, generate links. It does a get method. We jump down to M2M here. It's in the strategy, I think. Generate items. Else if operation delete. I wonder if that event queue, what's it called? SNGRC delete links. That's calling delete links. Yeah. Record decode. So I've got something in here about objects. I was struggling with using objects, not just previous objects. Where was it? Yeah, here. Still not sure how to handle arrays and objects properly. So it might be a place to explore that, because what's getting passed in? Why does that need to? Delete links record. Not really a record there, is it? So event.palm1. Event palm1 is this encoded JSON. Wrong to call it a record, because it's actually an object. This is what I love. Explore again. So if we go in here, see what that actually looks like. Don't really want to event queue it. So this would be my event there. And this is my palm one. A little bit of syntax highlighting would be amazing. If I could just click that and know where my end bracket is. But it keeps us alive, I suppose. So let's just see here. Our palm one equals. Just get rid of that. Is record really a record? Cannot read sysid from now. Oh, God. Sorry. Said a bad word. Fill that out. So looking at control objective, that's an M2M record there. So let's open that in Explore. And call that GR. Yeah, it's an object, not a record. I suppose it could be handled like a record. Maybe it's acting as a record. Yeah, because when we get into the API then, when we go through the script action, where did we go with the script action? Lost it. Too many tabs. I don't think you can see all my tabs. I tried to hide my address bar. Where's my script action? I am going right down a rabbit hole. I don't know how many people are still following this. It's great to have you all tuned in now if you are still around. Good turnout. Best turnout of the year. Delete links is my script action. So this is what catches it. Right, okay, so then that passes in delete links there. So delete links comes in as record, and because of that, get method record. So look, yes, so that's what the try's for. Okay, so the try doesn't crash out. So the try's not, it's just, I mentioned this earlier, if it's not an extended table, then get record class name is not available. But because it says that's not good, then it doesn't throw a complete wobbly, catches it, but we're not actually handling catchy. Normally that's where the script ends, but actually it's saying, so you've got another one, try, is it until, what happens, or try catch, final, is it? No, James, that's what I'm saying. So record is not glide record. It is when it comes in via the generate links. Okay, so the generate links business rule, it comes in and it passes current, which is a glide record, okay, of that same record. But when we go to, so generate links basically hard codes the operation as generate. The delete links, because I guess generate, the operation could be insert or update, but this been consolidated. They said it doesn't matter if it's insert or update, it's a generate links situation, but here it's definitely a delete. But both of them reuse the get method, passing record. So up here it's a glide record, down here it's not a glide record, but we want to have common functionality, so it handles table name If it is a glide record, which we try, then it gets record class name and it knows it will be extended. However, if it's not a glide record, or if it's not an extended glide record, I think in that case that would fail if you passed in the wrong record. It catches it, and that encoding of the JSON via the event is acting as a record. So what gets encoded, all the things that we would all the things we would access from it, table name, what's the word when you're acting as something? So we've got all the options in here. Posing as, no. So where do we go? Where do we go? Of course, delete links. So the only difference between that business rule, it runs after on the generate links. How is it handling the instance processing? I don't understand why it needs to be different. If you trigger something deleting, then it throws the actual processing asynchronously anyway. It's just pushing that at the top. I'm going to create an action. Move you down. I'm going to keep you open subflow. See if we can make better use of this. So this is going to be. Sorry, I've got too many. I don't know what that's like. When you see the screen switching, item processing utils. Flow designer. Item processing utils. Add processing content. Add processing content. Item processing utils. It's going to be my category. Naming conventions consistent there. Add processing content. That's my action. That's my input. It's an ID. It's an ID. State. Okay, so I pull that down. Business rule open. Okay. So current.profile type ID. There's no way of forcing that. If you change it to a reference, you could force it. So my input is going to be, is there a type sysid? Oh, there is. Wow. Didn't know that. So that's going to be entity type ID. And the content ID to the sysid. And the other thing is the type of that. So item processing utils, add processing content. I think that's called an action. This is how I end up with so many tabs open. It's read only. I was thinking it was going to be protected then. Add processing content. So go profile type ID content process. So wow. I'm going to emulate the whole action now, and then I can reuse it differently if I need to. So process, document ID, profile ID. Process is a string. Document ID is a sys ID. It's not mandatory. And profile ID, I might have them the wrong way around. But that doesn't actually matter in here, I don't think. I think the orderings, although you can move them around, I don't think it matters. Do a document profile, yeah. So add processing content. It's going to return anything. No, it doesn't even return. And they're using GR. How'd you like that? So we don't know if it's actually occurred. Get glid record. Another glid record. Add processing content. Running. Tracking. So I think that's all I need. Can you collapse that? Oh, nice. There we go. I was complaining earlier about about scrolling. Create app from payload. Just saw that. Sounds interesting. This is going to be. See, now I've got to recreate. Why can't I just? Type ID, content ID, document ID, and you can see why I stopped doing these episodes. Profile ID, I better be consistent. I haven't been, have I? Profile ID, let's rename it here. Profile type ID, just to match the API that I'm calling it against. Profile ID, content ID, document ID, profile ID, and process. That's all we need there, and then I'll just grab the top bit. It's item processing utils. Item processing utils, new item processing utils dot add processing content. What does anyone think about not varring each line? I've got an opinion on using the comma. I do love this, especially when the format is applied. Right now, obviously, it can look a little bit illegible. But script debugger processes that as one single execution. We need a formatter in this script thing here. I just need to, not just for formatting, but just needs to be a little bit more. A little bit more in there. I'll just do this and change to JavaScript. I think this is where you said there's no shortcut for that change, but there is a shortcut for this. No? Why don't you format? Have I got to be on a new line? Have I got to do that myself? Process. Yeah, if you're debugging and maybe even your variable assignment, you call a function and that goes off and that goes off. script debugger executes that in one line. So that is an argument for doing it in, var var var, because you can actually see the results of that and where it might be failing. That's what I wanted. I haven't found any other situation where I wouldn't want to use a comma. Yeah, when assignment goes wrong. Yeah, exactly. That's the only time that I've found. I'd be interested if there's any other cases. And I think it depends. Assignment can only go wrong, or not can only go wrong on a temp fate, but assignment, usually if it's going to go wrong, it's where you're assigning the results of another function. So if for some reason that function fails, you forgot to include the namespace or whatever, then that might throw a wobbly, and you don't know if it was that one, or that one. So there, I think definitely separate vars. In this case, yeah, it's just passing. It's a pass-through, right? Sweet. So that's going to create add processing content, item processing utils. Doesn't return anything. There's no outputs. Got my things assigned. So you see that it doesn't care what order stuff's coming in on. It just has access to them. But let me show you an example of when I'm handling an object, and maybe that's applicable for the next one. But variable doesn't care. Okay, so you define the data type here. Let's cover it on the next bit, because this is just for item processing utils. The next one we're going to actually pass an object in. So that's add processing content. When I look at my business rule, it's going to add those things. So maybe I'll combine these in a subflow. The subflow will combine the two bits of logic. Oh yeah, that's why I kept that other subflow open. But let's see how that plays out. Event queue, I'm going to encode. So what's going to trigger it? Current's going to trigger it, which will be the M2M. It's only queuing the event because it's asynchronous. Let's look at my existing generate links. I have to go here to open action, generate links. Could also be null pointer. Not sure what you mean there, James. So at this point, generate links receives the M2M and just fires that M2M in as the record for the generate links. Yeah, do you know what? I didn't even notice that. Didn't even notice, but I think this is using encode, isn't it? Yeah, I didn't even notice. New global.json.encode. JSON.stringify. Was there ever any benefit, or was it that JSON was just not available? Was the native one just not available? Why would it not have been available? So sysid table name. So if I'm just thinking, I don't need to encode that, but delete links. I can bypass a whole load of that. I don't need to pass an object in. It's only passing the object here because it needed to stringify it. Okay, to pass it to the event queue, to then decode it or parse it in the script action. But I don't need to do any of that stuff, do I? Because I can just look and copy action. I'm going to call this delete links. Yeah, it was, sorry, James, it was not available, but was there any reason for it to not be available? Was there any benefit? yeah, I could just sometimes just decisions are made, I guess. So here I've got an action called delete links. I'm going to rename this called from generate links to delete links. I'm going to pass in the grm2m, and here I'm going to pass in delete links, I think. If I look at the script, delete links record. Okay, so it's expecting to be sent and handled here as an object. I'm going to pass it in as a glide record, so it's going to get here anyway. There's no difference. I don't think there's any difference. Delete links. But I don't need to do any of that JSON stuff either. It was only being encoded to go onto the event queue so that it could be picked up asynchronously. And the business rule was running after, but then it wanted to throw the event so that it didn't get hung. Oh, pre-ES5, going back some. Right, okay. Okay, so I've got delete links, got an action, but can I handle this now in my subflow? So I've got an action for add processing content. Generate links in my subflow. Let's add an input, which will be called method operation. Let's call it operation. That's a string. That's mandatory. You can set a default value in. Now I was just checking if you can. You can set max length. Okay, so hint. I'm not going to do any of that. So I need some flow logic down here. Flow logic is going to be. I'll just do a switch, or do I have to do an if? I suppose it makes too much difference. If operation. No, sorry, that is the name. Okay, so generate or delete. It's the name of my condition. So when I collapse it, I think it looks a bit nicer. So here, why can't I handle you? Subflow inputs operation. Oh, didn't like me dragging it. Is generate. I'm guessing that it's a string unless otherwise. Then I drag you to there. If generate, okay, so that name's wrong. If generate. If generate links. Oops, caught up in my. Now I can do an else. If generate else, add action will be GRC profiles. Add processing content, and then delete links. and add processing content. It's going to take the content ID, which will be, I have to pass the sys ID. Yep. And actually that was expecting a GUID. Process is going to be, what was it, retiring, I think. Where were you? Delete links, retiring. Process is retiring. That's where the order might be nicer. Profile type ID is why are you not available on the M2M? Let me just save that. I'm either being blind. Am I being blind? My M2M record my input is an M2M. Yeah, do you know what, James? I don't like to. If I see that happening in the script, then I want to see it getting strong. If that's the right word. So even when people do GR equals whatever, JavaScript. I haven't set my default on this. I think that's the only problem with using a different login. So GR, if I said like my ID equals gr.sysid, that to me stands out a mile, and I get a bit upset about it. I don't know if I should just spend my energy on different things, but I always make sure I string something, especially if I'm dot walking it. There's no harm in doing that, and in that case, you know you're dealing with a string. It will save you aggro later if you're doing an array push and all that stuff, but if you just do this, then it's actually a glide element, glide object element, glide something. If you are doing a dot walk to a field, so let's say you're saying about content on its own is a glide record, but if I do that, it's the ID of the record, right? In the flow designer, we specified our action, input, action, our inputs, add processing. In here, we called it content ID, and it's a sysid GUID. So I wonder there, yeah, it's always a glide element object. Okay, what? Let's see what. Let's do this. So I've got GR here. You can see the top. Can you see? You should be able to see up to flow design. So if I look at flow design, yeah, you don't need to see my address bar basically. I know I switched tabs. You can't see how many tabs I've got open. So gr dot sn. You can see a scoped glide element, GRC content. If I just return that, I can see it's a scoped glide element. If I do that, it's a string. If I did var, I don't need to, you know what, I don't need to do half of this in export because it tells you what the type is anyway. It's like doing type of without type. Anyway, that's my point. If people do that in a script, if it might be fine, like most of the time, but if you start getting some funny behavior, you then got to question it. Is it that? Whereas if you just string it each time, if you know you're dealing with the ID, you want the ID, just string it, or get unique value. But then I've been told that won't always be the sysid. If it won't be the sysid, what could it be? When could it not be a sysid? Under what scenario? Because I do love that. But then I use it with a little bit of kind of hesitation. I'm not sure if I should be using it all the time. So I'm curious when we shouldn't use that. Get unique value. I do get value, set value, and again I'll mention Travis's King of the String post, which gives you a lot of pros and cons. Things maybe you haven't considered when you're working with glide records, get values, and strings. So what was I doing? Passing in legacy tables that use a different unique. Have you got any examples of some, James? I know you've been around the block, mate. But when I'd love a scenario of when it's not, just to for academic purposes more than anything. So, what was I struggling with? Oh yeah, GRM to M. There's my profile type. What's going on here? Got operation as an input. The glide record input. Never seen it. Yeah, it's a myth. It's a myth. So my reference. Oh, you can't see what I'm a reference to. I can't debug it, can I? So check that. What are you pointing at? Ah, there we are. Hover. Pick a content to entity type. So just in GRC M2M content entity type dot start with list. Let's add another tab. It's the wrong entity type. Don't tell me. Don't tell me that the base table doesn't have entity type on it and it's in the extended table. I've seen this on a couple of tables, but I didn't realise it was on here. So if I go to compliance, it's going to be called statement profile type. List. Yes, I got it. Configure this table. Control objective, yeah, I understand control objective because you want to have a reference, and I know that backfills itself. So when you set the content, it checks the type and it populates the compliance statement. Therefore, you've got access to that, and you .walk it accordingly, etc., etc. That's an SNGRC field. Why is it not on the SNGRC base table? Why does it need to be? Oh, that's frustrating. So now, something like that would never matter because you can always just go, you can just kind of, I think .walking can be brute force sometimes, even if it's not on the base table. Let's prove that. So, what is our table? Typed it enough times. Two of these tabs. SNGRC M2M content and profile type. gr.get, this one, gr.get there. Dog's just arrived. Gr, right, but if I do a gr.sngrc profile type, hopefully he just goes to sleep. If he starts snoring, then I have to kick him out. He's a good boy, he's just loud. Yeah, that current.sngrc profile type. It's undefined. I always felt like, have I actually got a GR here? Yeah. Maybe it's in a different script. So what you're saying, in script you'd end up doing another glide record lookup on the child record to get the record. Yes, but I thought you could still access that. Even if you're querying it from the base table, it doesn't exist. Maybe not. Why is that? Why has that failed me? So interesting then, from a, I can't access it, can I? Can I add processing content? Use the profile type ID. Yeah, because you can do a get class name on the GR that's coming in and do a get against the actual class and end up on the right table. Oh, that's thrown me, that has. So why am I doing this at the, I'm doing this at the subflow level. I don't really have another way of, what would I do? Get the record? Look up record. The table will be the class. Can't paste that here. Short description. Let's try this. I don't know. I've never messed with FD data object, to be honest. Script must return a value. Var table name equals FD data dot. Oh, I can get subflow inputs there. Dot. Oh, that's nice. That's a new feature, isn't it? Dot get class name. So what is it? Get class name. Get record class name. Is that populated now? Okay. Okay, excellent. So that's kind of saved it. So it's turned on. If I do that, I've turned the script off. But if I do that and then collapse it, then it's set. So I've got the class name, lookup record, conditions, well, sysid, select the table, class. Oh, that's not. Does that script step? Ah, there's this there. Okay, glide script, glide query. Let's return a value with glide record code query response. Can I drag something into it? Available in there? No. fd data dot subflow inputs dot gr dot sysid. So return sysid equals plus ID. Seems like a lot of faffing about. Why don't they just put a profile type on the base table? Don't fail on error. I think you should fail on error. Done. So lookup record. Still doesn't know what class it is, does it? But I have to be agnostic. Maybe a scripted variable. I'm getting a bit lost here. A bit too deep. Okay. Profile type ID. Can't access. Still doesn't know what it is. Damn it. Delete links. Add processing content. Need that profile type ID. Can I do something else? Get rid of that one. It's only down here that I need it. Add on an action above this. Yes, there. Nice. Don't know what the dynamic flow is. Set flow variables. This is what we're talking about. So select a flow variable. I haven't got a flow variable. How do I get a flow? Oh, I've got to add one here? No. Select the flow variable. Flow variable, here we go. No data available. Let's just save this. If I can knock this one on the head, here we are, data. No, data, flow variables, no data available. Change default title, properties. I've not read the docs on that. I saw that and I thought that it was a flow variable was something that was going to be available to me throughout the scope of the flow. Cheers, James. Thanks for tuning in, mate. I think I'm on my own with this one. I can see the viewer numbers dropping. It's getting late. But yeah, thanks for tuning in, man. Give me a shout and let me know what you think. Take it easy. What am I going to do? So can I just get if statement here? if class check condition 1 if gr this is then is there flow variables in here? No, it's all in flow logic. Get flow output, set flow variables. I'm just going to try again and see if I'm missing something. I've not read the doc, so it's my own fault. So if class check, what did I say it is? Compliance. Let's just do it there. So if compliance, then see, this is where flow variable would be lovely, right? Flow variables, flow designer, Quebec, flow variable. So let's see if there's a quick win on this. Using flow variables. What's the time? I'm going for 2 hours, I think. No, this is not the same thing. This is not the same thing, this is Paris. Yes, I'm just reading the blog here from Flow Designer. Who's written this one? Andrew Barnes. Yeah, talking about legacy kind of scratch pad. But how do you set the action picker? The visuals are lovely. I'm really loving that. Embedded a tool. Okay, here's the link. Set flow variables. Flow designer, yes. To help solve the need to store some data with the flow that isn't directly tied to one of the records. Familiar with the concept. Game changer. Yeah, it's not even that complex, the logic I'm doing here. You create the variables from the More Actions menu in the top right of the flow. Should be simple. More actions. Am I missing something? Oh, flow variables. I am missing something. Right, this is beautiful. This is what I wanted. So I want to get profile type ID. And that'll just be probably good. No, string. That's fine. It's a variable. Okay, it's a simple data type. Here, excellent. So if you're compliance, then get the record. It says lookup record. Get record would be lovely if you just had an action. You can probably create one. Let's return. How easy is that to do? I'm going right off on track here. Get record. Profiles. Input will be ID. That will be a GUID. Mandatory. And want table name. Can that be a table name? It's mandatory. Script. Sorry if you hear my dog. ID, table name, ID equals inputs.id, table name equals inputs.table name, bar gr table equals new provider record, table name, if get dot if gr table dot get ID output dot gr. Ah, Ashutosh, thanks for tuning in, mate. Yeah, cool. Take care, mate. I'm going to finish this off. I'm going deep now. I've forgotten where I was. Outputs.gr record equals gr. Call it gr table. That's what gr record really. Shouldn't it gr table? I don't know which way around it is. Gr equals gr record. Create variable name, and that will be glide. What is a glide var? Won't be mandatory because I might not have got one. Okay, so can I save that? Save that, publish, get record. Does that save me any time in my subflows? Don't know. I don't want to look up a record. Action, gr profiles, get record. ID is you, table name. I got a choice there. So table name is, where are we? Get record if. Okay, well I know at least I can hard code in this case because I know that it is a SN compliance interim content statement profile type. I know that's what you are. Done. And get record, and then assign a set flow variable profile type ID equals get record. Okay, let me save this. So I've computed the whole thing. Set flow variables. Can I get access to get record? How can you not have? Guide. What type could it be? Reference. So I wonder what, you can't look at the actions that exist out of the box, can you? Look up. Because the lookup record, glide var, well I don't know what glide var is. Maybe a document ID. Maybe you don't know what. Some interesting variables perhaps in there. GraphQL schema. Okay, let's do an object. Let's see. Record dot table name. It's a string. What else do we need from here? This is still not going to work. Ah dear. It's not going to work. You can go. Thought I was saving time, but then it doesn't know its class, so get record. Even though I've told it what its table name is, I can't access it. Oh, I can access it. Why is it? It just doesn't show in the picker. Get record, no data available. Interesting. Okay, I'm glad I didn't break the action, I hope. So my profile type ID is set there if it's compliance. Else, where can I do my else? Here. Else. Must be. Somewhere around. I'll move it. That doesn't make sense. Delete that. There. Oh, my else. Yes. Else. Action get record. Action. Like that. I've broken it. Nope, got it there. Action get record. ID is input sysid. And table name is going to be SN compliance. No, SN risk. M2M. Enter type to risk statement. And this is a long ass way of doing things. Set flow variables. Check. Set flow variables. Profile type ID. Flow var. Oh nice. Damn it. That's flow variables. I've set itself to itself. Get record. Can't I access the data from in there? I thought I told it then. I should be able to look up record. All of this because the table wasn't built correctly in the first place. And now I was at the start of this saying how I loved the table architecture. I'm in a subflow, so that generates links else and processing content. So in here, is there any? Tell you what I'll do. I'm going to go and modify my get record. Let's call it get profile. Let's call it get profile ID. I don't know if I can. How much of the name I can change now? Get profile ID. Input. outputs to reference, which is to content entity type, mandatory script, B GRM, which is U, GRM equals inputs dot GRM. Our table name equals GRM dot get record class name. Effect. I'm just going to nick that there, and so equals new live record. Table name go into dot get outputs dot profile type ID equals GRM dot get value SNGRC profile type. You should really be using curly braces to wrap. Even if you're going to put it on one line, use your curly braces. Even though it's a bit of a pain. Just need a formatter in this code section. That's going to get me then the profile type ID, which is going to be profile type ID, which is going to be good. Excellent. Save that. So I think it's letting me use actions before they're published, actually. That's what I think I've seen here. So in my generate links flow, I'm going to get profile type ID. And my M2M record's going to come in here. My output. How can you say no data available? Ah. My get record probably would have worked. I've not mapped my output. So I've got an output, but I've not mapped my output. I'm just going to do this now for the sake of brevity. Right. That's why there was no available. So that probably, get record probably would have worked. Might come back to that. It's getting late here. It's getting very late. Get profile type ID now. We'll just change something. This will have profile type ID. Get profile type ID. Let me just go down on that. If I save it, does that refresh it? We're still saying no data available. Done. We'll save it and close it and reopen it. I've definitely mapped it now. I'll close you. I'm going to open you again.
no data available. It's because I've not published it. Amateur hour. Now I can access it. Alright. I want to know if my get record would have worked in the first place. That's very frustrating. Just to get a profile type ID that should have existed in the table. Oh well. So that's going to throw that retiring content ID. Yeah, content sys ID. Delete links. Pass the into it. I don't know if there's any benefit to it. The fact that so this is from recap for anyone that's skipped along. Need a little recap video thing. So yeah, delete links that's the script action. Delete links, script action. Delete links, business rule. Triggers after, but then it just does this and throws an event. I don't need to throw an event. Oh, we're not passing in. I don't need to pass in because I've got the SID. My dog's getting noisier, I think. It's having the time of his life. So let's wrap it up. I think we want to test this. Save it. Oh, subflows, inputs and outputs. Yeah, operation. So if generate there, save that. We go back to our main flow, publish, and make this delete links inactive. And close these. Flows is called generate links. Generate or delete links. Oh. Generate or delete links. Properties. Yeah, that's fine. Need to click update. So created or updated. Is there no deleted in here? Oh, excuse me. That's my chair. Wow. Before and delete options. This was even in my findings. Wow. That's a whole lot of pain. That is a whole lot of pain. Generate links. Okay. Save this. Right. Actions is calling subflow. Generate links. If I copy this subflow, and I'm going to call it delete links. It's not lost, not all lost. Delete links. Okay, I'm going to get rid of the branching. This is delete links. Sub. Can't move tabs. Oh, that would be nice if I could move the tabs. So it's not going to be generate. Okay.
delete the whole thing? No, leave. Get profile type ID. Can I not do that? I'm going to put you up there. Put you up there. And put you up there. Delete. Okay. Don't need operation. There, save. Publish. I don't know if the camera's a bit low. Or am I sitting a bit low for the camera? Maybe. Delete links, generate links. I don't need the operation anymore. So at least that's what the doctor said. So delete that. Generate links. I'm not trying to pass it anything, am I? Nope. Boom. I don't need it. Okay, move you out of the condition and then delete the conditional branch. Yes. I've probably got a flow variable that I don't need. So that should be back to what it was. Calling from generate links. Yeah, subflow. That's activated. Activate that subflow, delete links. So what I then want to do is copy, create code snippet. Create copy code snippet. Go to my delete links. I'm going to make this active in here. I'm just going to throw in inputs grm2m equals current in there. Don't need that call. Don't need that call. And I don't want to run it in the foreground. I want to run it asynchronously, and we won't have any outputs. Why are you a problem? Mixed spaces and tabs. That's a very minor issue. After delete. Okay, you know what? You have to learn your lessons. I've even written that down. There's no delete. So definitely got some lessons on here. Yeah, findings. See, before delete, that one needs to be like bolded. Once bitten, twice shy, I guess. Delete's now throwing that through Flow Designer. It's active, updated, Flow Designer's active, published. No executions on here. Some executions from earlier. Let's go to our table, control objective. And I'm going to take you away. That should retire those 86 controls. There's 86 entities in here. That's a delete. See, maybe because it threw that asynchronously.
telling me about tracking the tyres. Let's look in our operation here. Been triggered. Error. What's the error? Open an operations view. Undefined value has no properties. This is in my subflow delete link, so I not mapped it. Inputs. Input.gr. Get profiles in action. What's he saying? Execution, operation. The undefined value has no properties. Input.gr M2M. So in my subflow, that's done. Flow variables, I don't really need you. Subflow inputs comes in. Okay, so let's get rid of you. Let's get rid of you. Save. Publish. Gotta take the easy route sometimes and just admit defeat. The fact that profile type is not available on the base table ruined my evening. It's really upset me, lads. Right, I'm going to copy that. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. It got triggered, although current is there. Shouldn't be a problem. I'm going to copy that. I'm going to revert it back to out of the box. And I don't need to send the event queue. Subflow. Next thing. Control object. So the problem is the delete operation was successful, so my M2M's gone, but my script failed. So I've got 86 controls that are all there, but lost their heritage. So I'm going to have to add you back in. Watch Flow Designer for the operation. Generate links, executions. That's one just now, is it? Yeah, just now. Complete. Successful. Not an issue. And there wasn't much to do with that one because all the records were already there. But then what I want to do is take you away again, which is the delete. I'm not seeing a message on the screen. It's complete, it didn't error, so I avoided the error. Let's go and check. Those controls should be retired, basically. Oh, that's another one thing. Yeah, controls are currently being generated. Oh, they're all still in draft. The entity type's gone. SNGRC item generation. That's stuck. See? Track retiring. Delete that. Let's try one more time. Solution. Generate links complete. Just now. Just now. So that's showing me the action. Okay, so that's actually changed. That's the operation. If I go back to Flow Designer and look at executions, which was the lowercase one, that's the actual subflow. Says it's run successfully. On my findings, this is, I'm basically seeing two records there because of the flow's been triggered and the subflow's been, no, the flow's called the subflow. Okay, but we don't see the actions, so maybe you do see flow, subflow. Let's take that away now. See if we can get this working. Let's just check the item generation table. Nothing stuck on there. Take you away. Delete links. Since it's completed. Something's not working on there. Not sure what it is, and it's getting very late. I've gone well over time. Try and do these things. Everyone's dropped off. Try and do these things in about an hour and 20 minutes. Learned quite a bit tonight. Had a really good turnout. I appreciate everyone pitching in, getting involved. Yeah, I'm not sure that I'm going to do any more of these. So what I'll do is try and just going to export the update set basically. You can now publish customizations to the application repository. Okay,
don't know if that's possible on a PDI. Customizations to the application repository. Go to the application record and use related links. You know, if that is accurate, could be a bit of a game changer for customer implementations rather than update sets. I need to look into what that means. I'm going to export that to XML. I'm going to go to connect and share. While we're here, let's download 4.8 of that. And what's happened here? Create project. You know, anyone who downloads this, please don't put it into a customer instance just for playing with. Okay. GRC IRM full flow. GRC profiles category. This is. What is it? App extensions, product, GRC, do not apply to prod. Arrival warnings for test. Let's put it testing. The article here will explain more. So flow design, conversion GRC to project. This is only for those who might be curious, but because we can build, please review the files. Whatever one is going to be put in here. This is just a proof insert some areas of GRC. Limited support will be available for that's a bit out of order, isn't it? Just say very limited, that's very limited support. This is basically, this is not something that I've built for anyone to actually use, but I just want to share it.
Okay, it's not for, it's not really for production consumption. And I'd hate for someone to feel like it was in any way tested. If you want to see some of the testing that's been done, check out the last 12 plus hours of YouTube streams version 0.01. It's actually version number 1 I've released. Visibility. It's public, compatible. Oh, up to Quebec. We started in Orlando, we've done Paris, release notes. Other than exploration of the potential. How do you say that without sounding? What's the point of sharing it then? I just think if someone wants to stick on their PDI and play around with it, I'm a bit worried that people might feel yeah, delete links is not working. It's a pain and lost a lot of time on that tonight. Let's save as export as PDF. All pages, including copy, device. Let me just move this. This is why I moved it into. Yeah, this is why I moved it. Moved to stream from a different account. Let's see if this is going to let me export it. Yes. No, you're in downloads. Where are we? This one. Got PDF on there. Oh, I can't put PDF. Put a YouTube link. I can do that. Print. Copy. Oh, see, maybe someone's tuned in at this late hour. I'm just finishing up. I was hoping this update the PDF. Can I put a zip on it? Can we? Doesn't tell us what files are allowed there. Save. Yeah, have a bit of fun with that. So, had an audio issue tonight. What else? What do we do? We had an audio issue, mic cut off, so I need to make sure I've got the power cord for that. I hope the audio situation hasn't been too bad. I'm running straight off of the laptop. I've got a dog in the background that's snoring. He's obviously very tired. I've got pink hair still, which I dyed in October for, you can see the pink that way. There. The pink ribbon for breast cancer awareness, and then the hairdressers went into lockdown. What else? Yeah, last session was in October, November maybe, so a few months ago. And this is the wrap up. The lessons learned, I think, have been reiterated, but you've got to learn your lessons. I knew that delete option wasn't an option, and I spent about an hour trying to handle it. Took a quick look at flow variables.
in Quebec, the new UI for Flow Designer. But yeah, there's basically limited benefit of continuing to try and convert the whole of GRC into Flow Designer. But I think it proves that Flow Designer definitely can solve a lot of problems. GRC is a very complex piece of application suite. So for me, Flow Designer is just the way to go for a lot of things. The ability to debug it, etc. Obviously, there's a little bit of groundwork to do, but if I'm building an application from scratch or even an extension, then that's going to be where I look to put my triggers and even just actions and so on. There's so much configuration there. Unfortunately, we still can't do before and delete in Quebec, but I've got lots more things to try and dig into on the platform. Script tracer, instance scans, play around a bit more with flow variables. What else is coming? What else is out there? Lots of stuff. Check out Quebec. Thanks to everyone who tuned in tonight. It's been an absolute pleasure. I've gone way over time, and yeah, just really enjoyed getting back into it tonight. But yeah, take care. Stay tuned on the community, and yeah, stay safe, I guess. Thank you so much.